As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the rolling hills, Emma stood at the edge of the cliff, the wind tussling her chestnut hair. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. The events of the past year had taken their toll on her, leaving her feeling lost and broken. But as she stood there, the sound of the waves crashing against the rocks below filled her ears, and a sense of peace washed over her. It was as if the ocean was calling to her, whispering its secrets in the breeze. Suddenly, a voice broke through her thoughts. "Emma," it said softly, but with a sense of urgency. She turned around to see a figure emerging from the shadows, his eyes filled with a mixture of concern and determination. It was Lucas, her childhood friend and the one person who had always been there for her through thick and thin. He looked at her with a mixture of sadness and hope, his expression mirroring her own inner turmoil. "Emma, please," Lucas pleaded, his voice cracking slightly. "Don't do this. You don't have to face this alone." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes as she looked into Lucas's familiar gaze. She had pushed him away in her darkest moments, believing that she had to bear her burdens alone. But now, standing on the edge of that cliff with the waves crashing below, she realized that she needed him more than ever. Without a word, she stepped away from the edge and into Lucas's outstretched arms. The weight of her burdens lifted slightly as she held on to him, feeling the comfort and strength that he offered. In that moment, Emma knew that she was not alone in her struggles, that she had someone by her side who would be there, no matter what. And as they stood there, the ocean roaring beneath them, she felt a flicker of hope ignite within her once again. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the tranquil town, Maya found herself walking along the cobblestone streets, lost in her thoughts. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change, that the peaceful facade of her life was about to be shattered. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, sending a chill down Maya's spine. It was a man she had never seen before, his piercing gaze locking onto hers. Before she could react, he spoke in a voice that sent shivers down her spine. "Maya, I've been looking for you," he said, his words coated in an unknown sense of urgency. Fear gripped Maya's heart as she tried to understand how he knew her name. Before she could respond, he reached out and grabbed her arm, his touch cold and unforgiving. "Come with me, Maya. There's no time to explain," he said, his eyes burning with an intensity that both terrified and intrigued her. Against her better judgment, Maya found herself being led down dark alleyways and winding paths, the man's grip never faltering. She tried to protest, to demand answers, but his silence was deafening. Finally, they reached an old abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The man pushed open the rusty doors, revealing a haunting scene inside. Shadows danced on the walls, and the air was thick with an ominous foreboding. "Welcome, Maya," a voice echoed from the darkness, sending a chill down her spine. Maya's eyes widened in disbelief as a figure emerged from the shadows, a figure she never expected to see again. "Dad," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. But this was not the father she remembered. His eyes held a darkness she had never seen before, a darkness that sent a shiver of fear down her spine. "I've been waiting for you, Maya," he said, his voice hollow and distant. "It's time you learn the truth about who you are." Her heart raced as she stepped into the dimly lit room, filled with an eerie silence that seemed to suffocate her. The only source of light came from the flickering candles scattered around, casting haunting shadows on the walls. She could feel the weight of his gaze on her even before she laid eyes on him. There he was, sitting in the corner of the room, his piercing gaze fixed on her. His eyes, the color of storm clouds, held a mixture of anger and longing, pulling her in like a powerful magnet. She tried to muster up the courage to speak, but her voice caught in her throat. "Is this how you plan to make your grand entrance after all these years?" His voice was like gravel, rough and full of bitterness. She took a step closer, the tension in the air palpable. "I never meant to stay away for so long, but I had to. I had to find myself, to figure out who I truly am." He scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "And did you find what you were looking for? Did you find yourself, only to come back and disrupt the life I've built without you?" Tears welled up in her eyes as she shook her head. "No, I didn't find all the answers, but I realized one truth. that you are the missing piece of my puzzle, the one I can't live without. His eyes softened for a moment before hardening once again. You can't just waltz back into my life and expect everything to be as it was. You left me broken, shattered into a million pieces. She moved closer, her heart breaking at the pain she had caused him. I know I hurt you, and I know I can never take back the past. But please, give me a chance to make amends, to show you that my love for you has never wavered. Silence hung heavy in the room, the only sound the faint flicker of the candles, and then slowly he stood up, his eyes locking with hers. I don't know if I can trust you again, but I'm willing to try. For us, for the love we once shared, he finally said, his voice tinged with uncertainty. A glimmer of hope blossomed in her chest as she reached out for his hand, intertwining their fingers like two lost souls finding solace in each other's touch. The journey ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges and doubts, but they were ready to face it together, to rewrite their story with a newfound strength and determination. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the vast ocean, Sarah found herself standing on the edge of the cliff, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision. She had come to this remote island searching for solitude and peace, but instead she found herself entangled in a web of secrets and lies. The wind whipped through her hair, carrying with it the salty scent of the sea. She closed her eyes, trying to block out the memories that haunted her every waking moment. The betrayal, the heartbreak, it all felt too much to bear. But as she stood there, teetering on the brink of despair, a soft voice broke through the chaos in her mind. It was a voice she thought she would never hear again, the voice of the one person who had always believed in her, even when she had stopped believing in herself. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she turned around, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and hope. And there he stood, his eyes filled with an intensity that she had never seen before. Without a word, he reached out his hand, silently offering her a lifeline in the stormy sea of her emotions. In that moment, Sarah felt a glimmer of hope flicker to life within her. She hesitated for a fleeting second, unsure if she deserved forgiveness or redemption. But deep down, she knew she couldn't continue to carry the burden of her past any longer. With a shaky breath, she reached out and took his hand, feeling a surge of warmth and familiarity wash over her. And in that simple gesture, Sarah knew that no matter how dark the night may seem, there would always be a beacon of light guiding her back to the shore of her own heart. As she stepped into the dimly lit room, the atmosphere shifted. The air felt heavy with tension, crackling with unspoken words. She faced him, her heart pounding in her chest as she prepared to confront the man who had betrayed her trust. His eyes met hers, a flicker of guilt passing through them before he schooled his expression into one of cold indifference. "You lied to me," she accused, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside her. "You made me believe in a love that was never real." He remained silent, refusing to meet her gaze as he fidgeted with the cuff of his shirt. The silence stretched between them, filled with the echoes of a love that had turned to ash. Finally, he spoke, his voice rough with unshed tears. "I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was doing the right thing." Her eyes narrowed, the fire of betrayal burning brightly in their depths. "The right thing? You call lying and deceiving me the right thing?" His shoulders slumped, the weight of his actions finally settling upon him. "I was afraid of losing you, of facing the truth. I thought if I hid it from you, I could protect you." Her anger wavered, giving way to a wave of sadness. "You can't protect me by lying to me. Trust is the foundation of any relationship, and you shattered that trust." He reached out a trembling hand, a desperate plea in his eyes. "Please, give me a chance to make it right. I'll do anything to earn back your trust, to show you how much you mean to me." She pulled away, the pain still raw and unhealed. "Some wounds run too deep to be easily healed. I need time to process this, to figure out if there's anything left worth salvaging." With a heavy heart, she turned and walked away, leaving him to grapple with the consequences of his actions. The echoes of their shattered love lingered in the room, a haunting reminder of what could have been. As the storm raged outside, thunder crashing and lightning illuminating the darkened sky, Sarah huddled in the corner of the abandoned cabin, her heart pounding in her chest. She had been on the run for weeks, trying to escape the clutches of her abusive ex-husband, but now he had finally caught up to her. The door burst open, and he stood there, his eyes filled with an unsettling mix of rage and determination. Sarah's hands trembled as she clutched the knife she had managed to grab before he found her. She knew she had to fight, to protect herself at all costs. "Sarah, you can't hide from me forever," he sneered, taking a step closer. "You belong to me, and I will never let you go." But Sarah refused to back down. With a newfound strength surging through her, she stood up, ready to face him head-on. "I don't belong to anyone," she spat, her voice laced with defiance. "Not anymore." The ex-husband lunged towards her, his fists clenched and a menacing glint in his eyes. Sarah dodged his attack, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. With a swift movement, she plunged the knife into his side, a mixture of fear and liberation washing over her. The man staggered back, disbelief flashing across his face before being replaced by searing pain. He collapsed to the floor, clutching his wound as crimson blood seeped through his fingers. Sarah stood there, breathing heavily, her hands coated in blood but her eyes ablaze with a fierce determination. "You should have never underestimated me," she whispered, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. As the storm outside began to subside, a sense of calm descended upon the cabin. Sarah knew that this was not the end of her journey, but a new beginning. She had faced her demons, fought for her freedom, and emerged stronger than ever before. And as she looked down at the man who had once held her captive, she realized that she was finally free. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the deserted street, Elena's heart raced with anticipation. She had made up her mind, nothing could stop her now. With a determined stride, she marched towards the imposing mansion looming in the distance. The gates creaked open ominously as she approached, adding an eerie soundtrack to her already racing thoughts. Memories flooded back, the laughter, the tears, the betrayal. She clenched her fists, steeling herself for what lay ahead. The mansion's grand doors swung open, revealing a figure standing in the shadows. It was him, the man she once loved, the man who had shattered her world into a million jagged pieces. His eyes widened in disbelief as he took in her determined expression, a mixture of rage and sorrow etched on her face. Without a word, Elena stepped forward, her voice cold and steady. "You thought you could destroy me, break me beyond repair, but you underestimated me, Anthony. You may have broken me, but you didn't kill me. And now, it's my turn." Anthony's facade crumbled, fear flickering in his eyes as he realized the depth of Elena's resolve. He stuttered, trying in vain to come up with an excuse, a plea for mercy. But it was too late. With a swift motion, Elena pulled out a small envelope from her purse, a confession, a testament to his crimes. She watched as understanding dawned on his face, the color draining from his cheeks. "This ends now, Anthony. No more lies, no more deceit. You will pay for what you've done," she declared, her voice unwavering. A tense silence hung in the air before Anthony finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, Elena. I never meant—" But Elena's glare silenced him. She had heard enough apologies, enough excuses. It was time for justice to be served. With a steely determination, she handed him the envelope, each word etched with the weight of her pain and betrayal. And as Anthony read the damning contents, his world shattered just as hers had. As Elena turned to leave, she felt a wave of emotions wash over her. Relief, sorrow, but above all, a sense of catharsis. She had faced her demons, confronted the man who had nearly destroyed her, and in that moment, she knew she was finally free. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the deserted street, Maria felt her heart race with anticipation. She stood outside the address she had been given, the dimly lit house looming ahead of her like a mysterious entity waiting to be discovered. Taking a deep breath, Maria knocked on the door, the sound echoing through the stillness of the night. After what felt like an eternity, the door creaked open to reveal a tall figure standing in the shadows. "Maria, welcome. I've been expecting you," a deep voice rumbled from within the darkened doorway. Maria's pulse quickened as she stepped inside, the musty scent of aging wood filling her nostrils. The stranger led her through a maze of corridors, the only sound being the soft shuffle of their footsteps against the creaking floorboards. Finally, they reached a small room bathed in flickering candlelight. In the center of the room sat an ornate wooden chest, its lid slightly ajar. Maria's hands trembled as she reached out to open it, her breath catching in her throat. Inside, nestled among velvet-lined compartments, lay a collection of shimmering stones, each one more breathtaking than the last. Maria's eyes widened in awe as she realized what she was looking at: the legendary Tears of the Moon, a treasure of immeasurable value and power. "You have been chosen, Maria." The stranger's voice filled the room, sending shivers down her spine. "Guard these stones with your life, for they hold the key to unlocking a great destiny." Maria knew that her life would never be the same again. With the Tears of the Moon in her possession, she held the power to change the course of history itself. But with that power came a great responsibility, one that she would need to bear with courage and humility. With a newfound determination burning in her soul, Maria made a silent vow to protect the stones at all costs. Little did she know that the darkest challenges lay ahead, testing her strength and resolve in ways she could never have imagined. As the flames licked the edges of the old wooden cabin, Sarah's heart raced at the sight of her home going up in smoke. The fire had spread fast, fueled by the dry summer air. She knew she had moments to grab what she could and escape. With tears stinging her eyes, Sarah dashed into the smoke-filled house, ignoring the intense heat as she searched desperately for her most treasured possessions. She grabbed the photo album her grandmother had made her, her father's pocket watch, and the necklace her mother had worn on her wedding day. But as she turned to run back through the doorway, a massive beam crashed down in front of her, blocking her path. Panic gripped her as the flames crept closer, painting the walls in shades of orange and red. Sarah's mind raced, trying to find a way out of the burning inferno. With a surge of determination, she remembered a small window in the corner of the room. Without hesitation, she rushed towards it, pushing aside the debris that blocked her way. The window was small, but Sarah knew she could fit through. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and plunged headfirst through the opening. For a moment, she felt weightless, the rush of cool night air on her face a stark contrast to the scorching heat she had just left behind. Sarah landed hard on the ground outside, the impact jarring her bones, but she scrambled to her feet, knowing she had no time to waste. As she stumbled away from the burning cabin, Sarah glanced back at the place that had been her home. The flames painted the night sky with their fierce glow, illuminating the faces of her past and the memories that had now turned to ash. But as she stood there, tears streaking her face, Sarah realized that the fire had not consumed everything. She still had the pieces of her past that were dear to her heart, and no fire could ever take that away. With one final look at the burning cabin, Sarah turned away, knowing that she carried with her the strength and resilience to start anew. The flames may have taken her home, but they had ignited a fierce determination within her that would light the way to a new beginning. As Amelia raced towards the burning building, her heart pounded in her chest. The smoke billowed out and the flames roared, threatening to devour everything in their path. She could hear the desperate cries for help from inside, driving her forward, pushing her past her fears. Ignoring the heat and the choking smoke, she burst through the doors, her eyes watering as the intensity of the fire hit her. Through the haze, she saw a figure slumped on the floor, struggling to breathe. Without hesitation, she lifted the person onto her shoulders and carried them towards the exit. The ceiling groaned ominously above her, threatening to come crashing down at any moment. But Amelia pressed on, her determination unwavering. She could see the light of freedom ahead, and with a final burst of strength, she burst through the door and into the open air. The crowd outside erupted into cheers as Amelia emerged, her precious cargo safe in her arms. She collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face as she took in deep gulps of fresh air. The person she had saved blinked up at her in stunned gratitude, their eyes filled with tears of relief. Amelia's chest swelled with pride as she realized that she had truly made a difference today. She had faced her fears, battled the flames, and emerged victorious. And in that moment, she knew that she was meant to be a hero, that her purpose in life was to help others in their time of need. As the sun set on the horizon, Casting a golden glow over the scene, Amelia knew that this was just the beginning of her journey. There would be more challenges to face, more lives to save, but she was ready. With a newfound sense of purpose burning in her heart, she stood tall and faced the future with a smile. For Amelia was not just a survivor, she was a hero, and nothing could ever change that.